So here we are again. Another day, another batch of documents that nobody really wanted to see resurface, and yet here they are, front and center in American politics. The Epstein files are back in the news cycle, and this time they're not going away quietly. On November 12th, the House Oversight Committee released a new tranche of emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and predictably, they mentioned Donald Trump multiple times. And the timing couldn't be more interesting because on that very same day, a bipartisan discharge petition to force the release of all the Department of Justice's Epstein files hit the magic number of 218 signatures, which means the House will be forced to vote on it whether leadership wants to or not. So buckle up, because this is a mess. Let's start with the emails. The House Oversight Committee, specifically the Democrats on that committee, released 3 emails that they obtained from Epstein's estate, and these aren't just passing mentions. In a 2011 email to Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving 20 years in prison for her role in Epstein's crimes, Epstein wrote that Trump is the dog that hasn't barked now. For those unfamiliar with that phrase, it's a reference to a Sherlock Holmes story where the significant detail is that a dog didn't bark when it should have. Basically, it means the absence of something expected. In this email, Epstein writes that someone, whose name is redacted, but who Democrats identify as a trafficking victim, spent hours at Epstein's house with Trump, and yet Trump has never been mentioned in all of this. The Republicans on the committee later said the redacted name is Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent victims, who sadly died by suicide in April of this year. Giuffre had never accused Trump of any wrongdoing, for what that's worth. Then there's a 2019 email between Epstein and author Michael Wolff, who wrote a book about Trump's presidency. In this email, Epstein says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that of course Trump knew about the girls because he asked Ghislaine to stop. That's pretty direct. Trump has repeatedly said he cut ties with Epstein years ago because Epstein was inappropriate with young women who worked at Mar-a-Lago. But according to this email, Trump wasn't just passively aware. He actively told Maxwell to stop whatever was happening. That's what Epstein claims anyway. There's also a 2015 email exchange between Epstein and Wolff where they discuss a potential CNN interview. Wolff tells Epstein that CNN is planning to ask Trump about his relationship with Epstein either on air or in the scrum afterwards. And Wolff's advice to Epstein is fascinating. He says, let Trump hang himself. If Trump says he's never been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win the election, you could save him, generating a debt. So Wolff is basically laying out a strategy where Epstein could use his knowledge of Trump's activities as leverage, either to harm him or to help him, depending on what serves Epstein better. That's wild. Now, Trump and his team have been quick to respond to all of this. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the emails prove absolutely nothing and accused Democrats of selectively leaking emails to create a fake narrative. Trump himself posted on Truth Social calling the whole thing the Jeffrey Epstein hoax and warning Republicans not to fall into the trap. He said only a very bad or stupid Republican would get distracted by this when they should be focused on opening up the country and fixing the damage caused by Democrats. So Trump is trying to frame this as a political distraction, a nothing burger that his opponents are using to deflect from their own failures. Whether you buy that or not probably depends on where you already stand politically, which is pretty much how everything works nowadays. But here's where it gets really interesting. While all of this is happening, there's been a bipartisan effort in the House to force the release of all the Department of Justice's files on Epstein. Not just these emails from his estate, but everything the DOJ has from years of investigation into child trafficking. This effort is being led by Republican Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky and Democratic Representative Ro Khanna from California, and they're using something called a discharge petition, which is a pretty rare procedural tool. Basically, if 218 members of the House sign a petition, they can force a floor vote on anything, even if the Speaker and leadership oppose it. It's a way for rank-and-file members to bypass the usual gatekeepers and bring something directly to a vote. On November 12th, this discharge petition got its 218th signature. The final signature came from Representative Adelita Grijalva, a Democrat from Arizona who was just sworn in that day after winning a special election to fill her late father's seat. She signed it immediately after taking her oath of office, and in her floor speech she said justice cannot wait another day. So now the petition has the numbers it needs, which means Speaker Mike Johnson will be forced to schedule a vote. Johnson has said he'll allow the vote to happen if they get the signatures, though he's also called the whole effort a moot point, arguing that the House Oversight Committee's investigation is already uncovering information, but the vote is coming regardless. Here's what makes this particularly dramatic. Only 4 Republicans signed this petition. 4 out of the entire Republican caucus. Those 4 are Thomas Massie, who's leading the effort, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, Nancy Mace from South Carolina, and Lauren Boebert from Colorado. Every single Democrat in the House signed it, all 214 of them. So this is a deeply divided issue within the Republican Party. Most Republicans are following Trump's lead and staying away from it, but these 4 have broken ranks, and that's causing tension, and the White House knows it. On the morning of November 12th, before the petition hit 218 signatures, Trump administration officials held a meeting in the Situation Room with Lauren Boebert. Yes, the Situation Room. That's typically reserved for national security crises, but they used it to meet with a congresswoman about a discharge petition. The goal was clear. They wanted Boebert to remove her name from the petition before it reached 218 signatures. If she had done that, the whole thing would have stalled out. They wouldn't have had the numbers anymore, but Boebert didn't budge. She met with them, heard them out, and then afterwards posted on social media thanking White House officials for meeting with her and saying they remained committed to ensuring transparency for the American people. She did not remove her name. Trump also reportedly tried to reach Nancy Mace, another Republican who signed the petition. They played phone tag for about 24 hours, and Mace sent him a direct message explaining why she's supporting the discharge petition. She hasn't removed her name either. So the White House's effort to stop this thing from reaching 218 signatures failed, and now they're dealing with the fallout. So what happens next? Well, under House rules, once a discharge petition hits 218 signatures, it has to ripen for 7 legislative days. That's just a waiting period built into the process. After those 7 days pass, the Speaker has 2 legislative days to schedule a vote. Johnson has indicated he'll expedite the process and bring it to the floor next week, so we're looking at a vote happening very soon, and the expectation is that it will pass the House. All the Democrats will vote for it, and probably at least some Republicans, especially those in swing districts who don't want to be seen as protecting Trump or covering up information about a convicted sex offender. But even if it passes the House, the road ahead is tough. The bill would then go to the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has already expressed skepticism about the need for this legislation, and back in September, Senate Democrats tried to force a vote on a similar bill, but Republicans blocked it. All but 2 Republican senators voted to prevent that effort from moving forward. So the chances of this getting through the Senate are pretty slim, and even if it somehow did pass both chambers, it would still need to be signed into law by Trump, who has made it very clear he opposes this effort. He's called it a hoax, a scam, a distraction. He's not signing it. So realistically, this bill is not becoming law, but that doesn't mean the House vote is meaningless. It puts every member of Congress on the record. It forces Republicans to choose between siding with Trump or siding with transparency and the release of documents that could provide more information about one of the most notorious criminals in recent history. That's a tough vote for a lot of Republicans, especially those in competitive districts. Do you protect the president of your own party, or do you vote for something that a lot of your constituents probably want, which is answers about Epstein? And this whole situation reveals a pretty significant fracture within the Republican Party and within Trump's base. Before Trump was elected, he and many of his allies called for the full release of the Epstein files. Kash Patel, who is now Trump's FBI director, went on podcasts in 2024 asking what the heck House Republicans were doing, saying they have the majority and should be forcing the release of these files. But then once Trump got into office and his Attorney General Pam Bondi released a memo in July basically closing the case and saying there's no client list and no evidence of blackmail or murder, a lot of Trump's supporters felt betrayed. They felt like they were promised transparency and then it got taken away. And you can see that frustration playing out with these 4 Republicans who signed the discharge petition. Marjorie Taylor Greene is about as MAGA as they come, and yet she's breaking with Trump on this issue. Same with Boebert. These aren't establishment Republicans or rhinos or whatever term gets thrown around. These are people who are usually very loyal to Trump, but on this issue they're saying no, we want the files released. And that's significant because it shows that even within Trump's most loyal base, there are people who aren't willing to let this go. Now let's talk about what we actually know versus what we don't know. Trump's association with Epstein has been public knowledge for a long time. There's that 2002 quote where Trump said Epstein likes women on the younger side. There are photos of them together at events. Roger Stone, a Trump advisor, quoted Trump in a 2016 book talking about how Epstein's swimming pool was full of beautiful young girls. So the fact that they knew each other and socialized isn't new information. What's always been the question is, what did Trump know about Epstein's crimes, and was he involved in any way? Trump has said repeatedly that he cut ties with Epstein because he was a creep. He's acknowledged that Maxwell recruited employees at Mar-a-Lago, and Virginia Giuffre was one of those employees. But he's been reluctant to go into detail about why exactly he viewed Epstein as a creep or what specifically prompted him to ban Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. The official story has been that Epstein was inappropriate with staff, but these new emails suggest that Trump knew more than he's let on. According to Epstein himself, Trump knew about the girls and asked Ghislaine to stop. If that's true, it means Trump was aware of criminal activity and didn't report it. That's not the same as participating in it, but it's also not great. Of course, we have to be careful here. These are emails written by Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender and manipulator who had every reason to lie or exaggerate or position himself in a certain way. Just because Epstein wrote something in an email doesn't make it true. He could have been inflating his relationship with Trump to impress other people or to create the appearance of leverage. Michael Wolff, the author who exchanged emails with Epstein, said in an interview that Epstein was an enormously valuable source to him about Trump, but he also acknowledged that the context of those specific emails is fuzzy, so we're dealing with claims made by a dead criminal about a sitting president, and there's no way to verify a lot of this stuff without more information, which is kind of the whole point of the push to release the files. The DOJ has said they reviewed everything and found no evidence of blackmail, no client lists, and no evidence that would lead to additional prosecutions of third parties. They also concluded that Epstein died by suicide, which has been a source of endless conspiracy theories, but a lot of people don't trust that conclusion, especially when it's coming from a DOJ led by a Trump appointee, and that's why there's so much pressure to release the actual files, not just summaries or memos, but the full investigative records so that people can see for themselves what's in there. One thing that's particularly galling to a lot of people is the sense that there's a double standard at play. If you're rich and powerful and connected, you get a different kind of justice than everyone else. Epstein himself got an incredibly lenient plea deal back in 2008 that was negotiated by Alex Acosta, who later became Trump's labor secretary before resigning over the controversy. That deal let Epstein serve just 13 months in a county jail where he was allowed to leave for work release 6 days a week. It was a joke. And now, even after Epstein's death, there's this feeling that the people who were in his orbit, the powerful men who may have benefited from his crimes or looked the other way, are still being protected. The files are being kept under wraps. The discharge petition is being opposed by leadership. The White House is holding Situation Room meetings to try to stop it from moving forward. It all feeds into this narrative that there's a cover-up happening. Now, is there actually a cover-up? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's possible that the DOJ really did review everything, and there's genuinely nothing else there that would lead to prosecutions. It's possible that releasing the full files would compromise ongoing investigations or violate privacy rights of victims. There are legitimate reasons why you might not want to dump thousands of pages of investigative files into the public domain, but it's also possible that there's information in those files that would be embarrassing or damaging to powerful people, and that's why they're being kept secret. Without seeing the files, we can't know for sure. And that uncertainty is what's driving a lot of the frustration. And what's clear is that this issue isn't going away. The House is going to vote on this. Republicans are going to have to go on the record. Some of them are going to vote to release the files, which will anger Trump. Some of them are going to vote against it, which will anger their constituents who want transparency. It's a no-win situation for a lot of them, and even if the bill doesn't become law, the political fallout from this is real. This is driving a wedge between Trump and parts of his base. It's creating tension within the Republican caucus, and it's keeping the Epstein story in the headlines at a time when Trump probably wants to be focused on literally anything else. And you have to wonder what's going through Trump's head right now. He's dealt with scandals before, he's dealt with investigations and controversies and accusations, but this one seems different. Maybe it's because Epstein is such a universally reviled figure that any association with him is toxic. Maybe it's because this is hitting at a time when Trump is trying to govern and push his agenda. Maybe it's because some of his own supporters are breaking ranks on this issue. Whatever the reason, Trump seems more defensive about this than usual, calling it a hoax, warning Republicans not to fall into the trap, holding meetings to try to stop the discharge petition. That's not the behavior of someone who's completely unbothered, and at the end of the day, what are we left with? We have emails from a dead criminal making claims about a sitting president. We have a bipartisan effort to release government files that will probably pass the House but die in the Senate. We have a Republican Party that's divided on whether to pursue this or let it go, and we have a public that's increasingly cynical about whether powerful people ever really face consequences for anything. The Epstein case has become the symbol of elite impunity. The idea that there's one set of rules for regular people and another set for the rich and connected, and every time new information comes out or every time there's resistance to releasing information, it reinforces that belief. So where does this go from here? The House will vote, probably next week, it'll pass, then it'll go to the Senate where it'll likely die. Trump won't sign it, even if it somehow makes it through, but the House Oversight Committee will keep investigating. They'll keep issuing subpoenas and releasing documents. Democrats will keep pushing because it's politically advantageous for them, and some Republicans will keep pushing because they genuinely believe in transparency and accountability, or because their constituents are demanding it, or both. And the rest of us will keep watching this play out, wondering if we'll ever actually get the full story, or if this will just be another chapter in the long history of powerful people protecting each other. One thing's for sure though, this story isn't over, not by a long shot, and as long as there are unanswered questions and unreleased files, people are going to keep demanding answers. Whether they'll get them or not, well, that's a different question entirely. But the fact that 4 Republicans were willing to defy their party's president and sign a discharge petition, the fact that the White House felt the need to hold a Situation Room meeting to try to stop it, the fact that this is still dominating headlines years after Epstein's death, all of that tells you that this matters to people. And maybe that's the real story here, not what's in the emails or what's in the files, but the fact that so many people refuse to let this go. They refuse to accept vague assurances and closed-door reviews. They want transparency, they want accountability, and they're not going to stop pushing until they get it, even if the odds are stacked against them. Anyway, that's about it. See ya.